Stocks take another slide as the coronavirus rears its ugly head again. My state calls for the resignation of its governor, and suddenly he decides it's time to bring in the National Guard and block a bill on police reform by a black man. And that's just the first half of the show. I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Well, folks, I hope that my feed kept going just fine over there because it froze up over here and I have no idea what the hell happened, but I was kind of nervous about it at first. I thought we were going to have to stop the stream and restart it again. It might be time to start getting ready to retire this laptop. Maybe I should take the notebook away from the cooling area. Maybe that'll help it. I don't know. I'm not a computer expert. I'm just a guy who screams into a microphone. But we have got a ton to get to today, so my anecdote on my laptop aside, we had better get started. But before we do, head on over to freedomscoop.com. Freedomscoop.com is going to be your one-stop shop for all of your news and commentary needs. Wyatt Birkenhoff got a new stream out there. We had a Know Nothing party again. So we've got our site decorated with some great stuff. So go ahead and check us out over there. We have got Stephen Ignoramus, Wyatt Birkenhoff, the R-rated conservative, the Freckles and Brit Show, the Generational Gap, and me. So go over there and check us out. I want to have my web guy make sure that we have everybody else's shows over here on the side because it appears that we just have the first three sitting over here, and I think we need to update that because we have great creators and they really need the recognition they deserve. But we also have to get the R-rated conservatives feed going back up here, and I don't know what's going on with that. So we'll talk to the web guy and we'll see what he wants to say. But come over and check us out and buy some of our swag because we love for you to wear our swag. All right, starting off with the stocks today. That's not what I wanted. I want to be over here. Now you've seen my restream. Come on. On-air production. Looks like we had a little bit of a slide yesterday, going back to the previous close, and we dropped like 700 points yesterday, which was incredible. You hate to see it, but it happened, of course. And you know it's going to happen too, because the news media, now that they're done with the protests, or now that people are bored with them, I should say, now that they're bored with them, nobody wants to talk about it anymore. Now it's time to go back and try and scare the shit out of you on coronavirus again. And that is what they're going to try and do. So let's see what the investors have to say here from Investors Business Daily from Ed Carson. Dow Jones Futures, soaring coronavirus cases, pressure stock market rally, delayed Disneyland reopening. Dow Jones Futures tilted lower versus fair value Thursday morning, along with S&P 500 futures and NASDAQ futures. The coronavirus stock market rally suffered heavy losses Wednesday as new U.S. COVID-19 cases were right at record highs. Wednesday, Disney announced late Wednesday that it will not reopen Disneyland on July 17th. Apple will reclose more stores over coronavirus concerns. Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Tesla, Teladoc, Zoom Video, and Walt Disney moving on their respective COVID-19 exposures. COVID-19 infections continue to soar in Florida, California, and much of the country. Hospitalization rates are increasing in many states as well. New York, New Jersey, Connecticut said they will quarantine travelers from U.S. states with high COVID-19 infection rates. The stock market rally suffered broad-based losses with airlines, restaurants, retailers, and Disney stock hit hard. Those travel and consumer-facing sectors remained under pressure early Thursday. Among growth stocks, coronavirus plays such as Teladoc stock and Zoom stock held up relatively well on Wednesday. Economic recovery growth names such as Tesla stock, RH, and Carvana had bigger losses through RH stock, Apple stock, Microsoft stock, and Nvidia stock. Big cap leaders that have fared relatively well in the coronavirus crisis were somewhat in the middle. Still, growth stocks generally didn't show much damage. That includes Tesla stock, which also faced several negative headlines related to poor quality. Meanwhile, Disney stock and many airlines, which had rallied sharply in May, have tumbled since early June as coronavirus cases and fears return. Tesla stock, Apple stock, Microsoft stock, and Nvidia stock are all on IBD leaderboard. Nvidia stock is on the IBD 50. Dow futures fell 0.7% versus fair value. Dow Jones Industrial Average aerospace giant Boeing fell 5% on a report that foreign regulators are demanding further flight control changes to the 737 MAX after it returns to service, and analysts downgrade and resurgent coronavirus cases and travel fears also are taking a toll. Fellow Dow component Disney also retreated. S&P 500 futures sank 0.5%, Nasdaq 100 futures dipped 0.15%. Dow Jones Industrial Average futures have been more volatile in recent days, though today has been relatively calm. Remember, overnight action in Dow futures and elsewhere doesn't necessarily translate into actual trading in the next regular stock market session. So we will watch on to that. But let's see what CNBC had to say on the rebuttal over here. Dow futures fall 100 points as Wall Street struggles again after Wednesday's sell-off. This is from Fred Imbert and Yoon Lee. Stock futures were slightly lower in early trading Thursday following a steep market sell-off triggered by intensifying worries about the rising number of coronavirus cases. Futures on the Dow Jones Industrial Average slipped 130 points or 0.5%, implying an opening loss of 53 points. S&P 500 futures dipped 0.4%, and Nasdaq 100 futures were marginally lower. More than 45,000 new coronavirus cases were confirmed on Wednesday, a record that surpassed the previous April 26 peak by over 9,000 cases. According to an NBC News tally, states such as Texas, Florida, California, and Arizona have all seen major spikes. New York, New Jersey, and Connecticut also ordered visitors from certain hotspots states to quarantine for 14 days. This resurgence led Apple to reclose some stores in Houston where intensive care unit beds are near capacity. It also prompted Disney to delay the reopening of its California-based parks on beyond July 17th. The negative headline sent the market into a downward spiral on Wednesday. The Dow dropped 700 points, while the S&P and Nasdaq fell 2.5% and 2.1% respectively. All three benchmarks posted their worst day since June 11th. The tech-heavy Nasdaq also snapped an 8-day winning streak. The market has been optimistic that the economy is reopening and that the life would get somewhat back to normal, but the virus or the media may have other ideas. Chris Zaccarelli, Chief Investment Officer and Independent Advisor Alliance, said in an email, "The market has again gotten caught up in the crossfire of increasing numbers of COVID-19 cases, trade protectionism, and politics." So we've got a couple things going on here, but for the most part, they're going to try and cram coronavirus down your throat until you stop going to work and sell off all your stocks. So that's what we're looking at on this. But let's see what's going on around the rest of the country. From Fox News, Seattle Chop Zone prompts lawsuit from businesses, residents, reports. From Dom Colicchio. Numerous Seattle businesses, including an auto repair shop, a tattoo parlor, and a property management company, sued the city Wednesday, alleging city officials were complicit in allowing an occupied protest that has made them feel unsafe in their neighborhood, according to reports. I probably would have worded that with a little bit stronger language, but I understand the sentiment that they're going with. Let's keep going. Workers and residents also joined the lawsuit over CHOP, the Capitol Hill Occupy protest, which drew scorn from President Trump and other critics who accused Mayor Jenny Durkin, the city's police chief, and other city leaders turning the area over to anarchists. Organizers of CHOP, part of the widespread rioting and demonstrations that followed the May 25th death of George Floyd in police custody in Minneapolis, said they sought to establish a police-free area in Seattle's Capitol Hill district. No, they sought to secede and then realized they weren't going to get their damn welfare checks, is what they did. But, well, go ahead and keep telling yourself that's what happened. Since the occupation began June 8th, the area has seen shootings, vandalism, and other crimes. Last Sunday, a 17-year-old victim was shot in an arm, and last Saturday, a 19-year-old man was shot dead, and another person was critically wounded. Q13 Fox of Seattle reported in both cases hostile crowds stopped police efforts to reach the crime scenes, the station's report said. This lawsuit is about the constitutional and other legal rights of the plaintiffs, businesses, employees, and residents in and around the CHOP, which has been overrun by the city of Seattle's unprecedented decision to abandon and close off an entire city neighborhood that was not Seattle's decision, leaving it unchecked by police, unserved by fire and emergency health services, and inaccessible to the public at large, the lawsuit says, Q13 Fox reported. One local business owner, Joey Rodolfo of Buki Clothing, told Fox and Friends this week that he plans to move out of state because of what he described as Seattle's lack of governmental leadership. Since we have no leadership and we have a city council that's so socialist, there really is very, very little support for businesses, Rodolfo said. As far as the city reaching out to small businesses like ourselves or any business, there has been zero. Goodbye to that tax revenue, Jenny Durkin. Hey, guess where you have lower taxes? Right over here. Doesn't rain as much, but it snows a little bit more, and we make up for it. The Seattle City Attorney's Office told local media that it hadn't yet had an opportunity to review the lawsuit, but it planned to respond after reviewing it. The plaintiffs alleged the city leaders provided the demonstrators with barriers, public restrooms, and medical supplies, in effect supporting the occupation of the neighborhood and hindering the efforts of local business people, employees, and residents to reach their buildings, receive deliveries, and provide services. The Seattle Times reported. Hold on a sec, I have a reaction for this. Sorry, that was unprofessional. You've got to look at this from the outside, looking in on all of this here. This is just, first off, it's absolute ridiculousness as far as everything goes off of this. But my God, if you were dumb enough to try and pull something off like this, and I mean, Razorfist has said it, Styx has said it, I've said it. Numerous other people have said that this looked like this was a trap to try and get Trump to come out and bring the military out and be the authoritarian that they tried to convince him to be. And when he wasn't, and they started shooting at each other inside the Occupy protest, then Mayor Durkin decided it was time to do that. And it was too little too late. And now she gets to sit back and reap the consequences of either all of her businesses leaving, or suing her, or both. That's the best part, or both. Sue her for the moving costs. Yeah, you decided not to get the state involved and not to get the National Guard involved, which I know Jay Inslee has more of a instrumental role in the National Guard, but you could have reached out to him, because remember, he claims, and I don't know if this is true or not, that he knew nothing about this going into it. He knew nothing about this. So you reap what you sow. I can't believe the same guy who signed the Patriot Act was able to win in this fashion. And I mean, he still hasn't technically won yet, but they're going after the city and maybe even the state after this, and not the federal government. So, all right, let's keep going. From the Daily Wire, on a little bit more of a somber note, Black Lives Matter leader: if this country doesn't give us what we want, then we will burn down the system. From Daily Wire News. A Black Lives Matter leader told Fox News on Wednesday evening that if they are not given what they want, they will burn down the system. Hawk Newsom, what a name. Head of the Black Lives Matter for Greater New York, part of the neo-Marxist Black Lives Matter movement, made the remarks in combative interview with Fox News anchor Martha MacCallum. MacCallum began the interview by noting Newsom's apparent support for using violence to achieve political goals. Obviously, people watch what you say in that video, that you now want to shove legislation down people's throats now that you have everyone's attention. And you also have said that violence is sometimes necessary in these situations. Said MacCallum, what exactly is it that you hope to achieve through violence? Wow, it's interesting that you would pose a question like that, because this country is built upon violence, said Newsom. What was the American Revolution? What's our diplomacy across the globe? We go in and blow up countries, and we replace their leaders with leaders who would like. So, for any American to accuse us of being violent, it's extremely hypocritical. Those are the leaders that your side elected, by the way. And Bush. But they love Bush now, so I'm going to call that a bullshit line. Newsom went on to frame his support using violence as promoting self-defense, stating, "It seems to be the hypocrisy of America that when black people start talking about arming themselves and defending themselves, the talk is violent. But when white people grab assault rifles and go to our nation, state capitals, it's all good." Yeah, straw man much. After Newsom tried to get McCallum to discuss her stance on the Second Amendment, she returned to her initial question. The only reason I posed the first question to you the way that I did, I watched you talking on a bunch of different interviews today, and you said, burn it down, McCallum said. You said, burn it down. It's time. So that makes me think that you want to burn it down. If this country doesn't give us what we want, then we will burn down the system and replace it, Newsom responded. All right. And I could be speaking figuratively. I could be speaking literally. It's a matter of interpretation. Like, let's be very real and observe the history of the 1960s. When black people were rioting, we have their highest growth and wealth and prosperity. Ownership. Wow, I misread that one entirely. Should have said property ownership. That's what it says, not prosperity. I'm so used to seeing wealth and prosperity, but when people get aggressive, they escalate their protests. Cops get fired now. You have police officers. You have Republican politicians talking about police reform, said Newsom. I don't condone nor do I condemn rioting, but I'm just telling you what I observed. He went on to state, I just want black liberation and black sovereignty by any means necessary. Well, then leave. That's what I have to say on that. And, I mean, if you want to burn down the system, you are going to make it exactly 5 miles outside of the city limits. I'm telling you that right now. Because once you start trying to pull that shit out into the suburbs, the people are going to start fighting back. And that's been a big thing right now is the BLM Marxist movement has pretty much centered and focused their ideas into large, major liberal cities. They talked about coming out into the suburbs, but you notice that fell flat pretty fucking quick. So, no, we are not going to take part in your revolution, no matter how much you want us to. But, yes, go ahead and keep destroying the cities that you live in. Let's keep going. From my neck of the woods, from the local Fox affiliate over here in Milwaukee, Governor Evers offers National Guard in response to unrest in Madison sparked by a man's arrest. This is from Aaron Mabin and the Fox News Channel. Governor Tony Evers Wednesday, June 24th, authorized the Wisconsin National Guard to support local law enforcement in Dane County in response to civil unrest in Madison Tuesday night. Protesters toppled statues, vandalized buildings, and are accused of assaulting a Democratic state senator on video at the Capitol after day-long protests turned violent. Both Evers and Madison Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway condemned the violence and destruction on Wednesday morning. Meanwhile, a spokeswoman for the protest group issued a list of demands. Governor Evers announced Wednesday morning he was prepared to activate the Wisconsin National Guard to protect state buildings and infrastructure. Yeah, after they beat the crap out of a progressive state senator. The protests in Madison last night resulted in serious injury to bystanders as well as significant damage to state property, said Governor Evers in a news release Wednesday afternoon. The Wisconsin National Guard will serve in a limited authorization meant to make sure people can exercise their First Amendment rights while ensuring the safety of members of the public and state buildings and infrastructure. The violence began after a group of 200 to 300 protesters marched through downtown Madison, initially blocking intersections and obstructing driveways, Madison Police Department said in an incident report. The situation escalated when the group reached the state capitol grounds. And I've been checking up on my friends that live in Madison too, because it looks like it's or not even just live, but work in Madison, because it looks like it's getting harsh out there. I'm glad I don't work there anymore, and I'm sure as hell glad I never lived there. Please don't take the actions out here as violence, said Ebony Anderson Carter. Anderson Carter was nearby as the protest took a turn following the arrest of a black man near a Madison restaurant. Cell phone video shows the 28-year-old man using a bullhorn and carrying a baseball bat inside the building before his arrest. Police said he had to be tackled as he attempted to escape custody. Oh, police brutality. He had a bat. We walked into Cooper's Tavern, said Anderson Carter. He made a political statement and he left and was greeted by violence he didn't give to anybody. What do you call carrying a bat into an upscale yuppie bar? I know Cooper's Tavern. Glass at the nearby Tommy Thompson Center was shattered. Protesters also broke the windows of multiple buildings in the Capitol grounds and tossed a Molotov into the city-county building, police said. The group tried to break into the Capitol building, but officers repelled them with pepper spray. This morning, I woke up, I saw the headlines, and I wanted to see what was going on, said Elliot Shochet. I think that's how that's pronounced. Shochet spoke with Fox News near where the Forward statue once stood before being dragged down the street. A statue of abolitionist Hans Christian Heg was also toppled. The other one I know is a Civil War general who was a famous abolitionist, I believe, so that doesn't make sense, said Shochet. And then they go on to talk about Tim Carpenter getting the crap beat out of him yesterday. So, and we read that yesterday. So yeah, they're burning down my city's capital, and once again, in the legitimate, most progressive and liberal area in Wisconsin, they're out there just doing what they do. But I bet you the second they step out in Columbus, it's going to be all over. Maybe even Sun Prairie, maybe not, but yeah, I kind of know the surrounding area up there because I worked there for quite a while. Yeah, as soon as they get out of the city of Madison, that's going to stop pretty quick. But good on Evers for doing something. And, I mean, honestly, good on Trump for letting the states decide what's going to be appropriate and what isn't. Because you know that if it had been Trump that come down and nationalized this, he would be the authoritarian. He's squashing the First Amendment. He's an authoritarian. See, we told you he was going to come out and be a fascist dictator. But they can't exactly say that about Evers, can they? All right, let's keep going. Speaking of Evers, from WAOW Now out of Eagle River in northern Wisconsin, Representative Tom Tiffany, fact check, not a representative yet, Representative-elect Tom Tiffany. No, I apologize. This was a special election. Nope, I got to fake news myself because he is a representative now. Sorry. Calls for Governor Evers' resignation. I apologize for that. On Wednesday, Congressman Tom Tiffany made a statement in response to a violence in Madison on Tuesday that calls for the resignation of Governor Tony Evers. In the release, Tiffany said that Governor Evers has ignored the crisis related to protests for weeks, and that his silence is deafening and his inaction is unacceptable. Yeah, Tom Tiffany got dragged for this, and he was dragged by the same people that was saying that President Trump's inaction was unacceptable. Americans are alarmed and disgusted by what has now become nearly a month of sustained lawlessness, bedlam, rioting, and violence. Radical extremists and their enablers, including Governor Evers, continue to refer to these outrageous mob tactics as protest. They are not. Property damage, destruction, and physical assault are not legitimate forms of political discourse. They are criminal acts. And that is a fact check true. So, I mean, good on Tom Tiffany. And this is probably what pushed Evers over the edge to bring the military out, or the National Guard at least, to try and get a crackdown onto this. But once again, it's on him, and it's federalism as well. You can't just bring the military down from the federal level and say, okay, we're going to come in and crack skulls. It is a local decision, and it always has been. And I want to say that in Evers' place, I probably would have done the same thing by this point, and I may have done it even a little bit earlier. But as soon as I did that, if I was the governor of Wisconsin, I would have been called a fascist and a tyrant dictator because of the projected R that would have been after my name. So it's interesting to watch this as they're tearing down left-wing cities, and left-wing governors have to be forced to either bring out the National Guard or just ignore this and allow it to happen. And they're starting to come into the damned if you do, damned if you don't area that they've been trying to box Republicans into for decades upon decades at this point. Let's keep going. From the Daily Wire again. Bubba Wallace changes course in a new statement on emotional past few days. This is from Amanda Prestigiacomo. NASCAR driver Bubba Wallace struck a much different tone over the alleged noose incident in a statement issued Wednesday than he did the night before during an interview with far-left CNN host Don Lemon. Is it Lemon or Lemon? Because I've heard it pronounced both different ways, and I don't want to disrespect the guy, even though he would jump at the chance to disrespect me. I want to at least give him the benefit of the doubt and pronounce it the proper way. I mean, it's spelled lemon, but that's a side tangent all in and of itself. Let's keep going here. Instead of expressing anger over the FBI findings that the noose his team found hanging in the garage stall on Sunday was in fact not part of a hate crime but a mere garage pulley, as he did on Tuesday night, the driver expressed gratitude that he was not the victim of a hate crime and praised NASCAR and fellow drivers over their show of unity and support. I'm willing to bet that they started to figure out that he was on his way out the door. I am willing to bet that they figured that out when he went back and doubled down, because he's not going to have any support anymore. I don't know what his stats are because I've been watching NASCAR, but from what I've been hearing from the outside, and this is just hearsay, he wasn't that good of a racer either. I cannot confirm. It's been a very emotional few days, the statement started. First off, I want to say how relieved I am that the investigation revealed that this wasn't what we feared it was. I want to thank my team, NASCAR, and the FBI for acting swiftly and treating this as a real threat, Wallace wrote. NASCAR has issued a statement Tuesday regarding the FBI findings, which clearly stated that the garage pull rope fashioned like a noose had been positioned there since as early as last fall. I think we'll gladly take a little embarrassment over what the alternatives could have been, Wallace said. Make no mistake, he added, though some will try, this should not detract from the show of unity we had on Monday and the progress we've made as a sport to become a more welcoming environment for all. On Monday, as noted by the Daily Wire, dozens of fellow NASCAR drivers teamed up to help push Wallace's race car to the front of the Geico 500 field at the Talladega Superspeedway in Alabama as a show of support and solidarity after the driver's team discovered the alleged news. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure his PR team came out and said, you better back this up, dude, because this isn't going to work for very much longer. You can't Jussie Smollett this. And good on him for listening, I guess, but still, the fact that you were going to try and drive this home does make me question your character a little bit, but once again, I have no business to judge because I don't do NASCAR anymore. Alright, let's keep going here. From NPR, Senate Democrats block GOP police reform bill. This is from Claudia Grisales, Kelly Snell, and Susan Davis. Senate Democrats, emboldened by a national outcry for reform of the country's law enforcement departments, blocked debate Wednesday on a Republican police reform bill that they said did not go far enough to address racial inequality. Republicans needed 60 votes to proceed to begin debate on the legislation. The motion failed 55 to 45, with the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell voting against it for procedural reasons to allow the Senate to try again. Two Democrats, Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Doug Jones of Alabama, broke with their party, as did independent Senator Angus King of Maine, who caucuses with the Democrats. 1 week ago, with his party's leadership behind him, Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, the chamber's lone black Republican, unveiled the bill with hopes of voting and the measures ahead of the 4th of July recess. Republicans said the plan addresses a national outcry for reform of the country's law enforcement departments and agency. But Tuesday, Democrats were demanding bipartisan talks before greenlighting floor debate. The move rankled Republicans, who say they've already addressed Democrats' demands to move quickly on a bill addressing police brutality. But see, the Democrats don't want to move quickly on the bill. They want to just vote out anything that's Republican right now and run on this in November. This is, you know what's happening here. You absolutely do. Because it's the same thing that we saw in Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh has sided with Democrats in pretty much every big decision that we've seen going out of this. He sided with the Democrat side. For all intents and purposes, he was the dream justice for the Democrats. I think he is more constitutional and textualist than a lot of the right-wing media and punditry want to give him credit for, but he is, for all intents and purposes, the justice that the left really wanted. But they had to try and block him until after the election. This is the exact same thing that we saw before. It's not that they didn't want him in there and they thought that he was going to be necessarily a bad justice. They just wanted to hold this off until after the election because they wanted to run on this. And this is going to be the same thing with the police reform bill. And the House is going to throw something together, and knowing full well that it's not going to make it past the Senate. But once again, they want to run on this. They want to make the ads out there so they can say, Republicans want to see police killing black people en masse in the streets. vote for Democrats to flip the Senate, and we will make a police reform bill. And we will get rid of the evil orange man. That's what they're looking for. That's exactly what it is at this point. They are trying to take the Senate so they can block whoever the replacement is for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Because they know they have no chance in hell of beating Trump. I don't care what his polls in the aggregate said. Joe Biden is a mannequin. And America knows it. So that's what this is going to be. And I do want to say why I thought that black voices were the ones that we needed to hear from, and black opinions were superior to white opinions. So why is it that Tim Scott's bill got denied from even debating? That's the hardest part. Why not at least go in and debate the damn thing? But no, they don't want it to get anywhere because this is an election tactic. It absolutely is. All right. I do want to read just a little bit of the bill. It is linked in the Discord, so you can go over and check this out in my Discord. I'll actually go over and throw it on Twitter as well, so remind me that I don't want to close this when I'm done looking this over. So let's see what we've got here. The Justice Act, just and unifying solutions to invigorate communities everywhere. Section by section analysis. The Justice Act will maintain the constitutionally limited role of the federal government, and that's the important part right here. Also probably the part that pisses the left off. This sentence right here, or not this sentence, but this clause. The Justice Act will maintain the constitutionally limited role of the federal government plays in local law enforcement decisions. While still affecting significant change, the bill uses an innovative system of federal grant-related incentives to ensure local and state jurisdictions cease the use of dangerous techniques, such as chokeholds, and are reporting significant data about when an officer uses force or a no-knock warrant is issued. It gives the locals the carrots while still giving them their autonomy. The bill will increase police access to grants for body-worn cameras and the best possible training when it comes to de-escalation and the duty to intervene. The act also makes lynching a federal crime, increases penalties for false police reports, works to increase appropriate access to police records for hiring decisions, assists local departments with minority hiring, and creates 2 commissions to give the nation a full picture of what issues facing black men and boys, and undertake a thorough review of our criminal justice system. While we recognize that the disparities affecting communities of color run deeper than their interactions with law enforcement and the criminal justice system, the Justice Act provides straightforward, positive steps to keep our citizens and officers safe. This is a 15-page PDF. Like I said, you can go out and check it out for yourself. There's a lot of really good information in here. And this really did seem like a really good bill. And it kind of disgusts me that the Democrats don't even want to talk about this. But, I've been watching them now very closely for the last 3 years. And no, it's absolutely within their character to do so. All right, let's not close that. Let's keep that open so I can throw it over on Twitter here. And let's talk about the mysterious 7-headed beast that's going to end the world here. From Fox News, Florida coronavirus cases reach record levels with 1,400 more cases than previous high. This is from Ann W. Schmidt. Florida saw a record number of coronavirus cases on Tuesday, the State Department of Health reported. According to the agency, there were 5,508 new cases as of midnight on Tuesday and 44 more deaths related to COVID-19. So deaths with COVID, not from COVID. Overall, Florida has a total of 109,014 cases and 3,281 coronavirus-related deaths. That is deaths with coronavirus, not from coronavirus. The agency reported. The Orlando Sentinel reported that Florida had reached a record level of new cases with Tuesday's numbers, 1,400 more than previous record. However, the deadliest day for the coronavirus cases in Florida was May 4th, when 59 deaths were reported, according to the newspaper. The 44 deaths did not happen all on Tuesday. It's just when they were reported, according to the Sentinel. The newspaper reported that it takes as long as 2 weeks to get confirmations of coronavirus-related deaths in Florida. Since the start of the pandemic, Florida has performed 1.6 million tests and had 13,574 hospitalizations as of Wednesday, according to the Sentinel. This week, the state has the ninth most fatalities in the U.S., but ranks lower on the death rate, the newspaper reported. So, yeah. And I know there was a spirited discussion going on over the per capita basis of the coronavirus deaths versus the actual number between a resident of Florida and a resident of Texas over in the Generational Gap Discord, which I do recommend that if you're in mind that you also go and check out that Discord as well, because mine has been a little bit more quiet because it's still more of a staging area for my guests and my upcoming shows. But I mean, most of the same people are in my Discord as are in the Generational Gaps as well. So I do recommend going and checking out both. And maybe we can get some more spirited discussions going on in mine as well. But as we go along with this, I mean, yeah, there are a few differences in what's going on here. But this is also bad numbers, and these are going to be the numbers that they're going to start trying to shove down your throat to make sure that that economy stays closed right up until November, because we can't have a good economic recovery as we go into an election year. All right, let's keep going here, talking more about the coronavirus from the Daily Wire. Cuomo again tries to blame federal government for COVID nursing home crisis. White House not so fast. This is from Emily Zanotti. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo again attempted to draw the federal government into a growing state-level crisis, blaming the Trump administration for both ordering nursing homes and other adult care facilities to take patients suffering from the novel coronavirus and for obscuring the virus's origins. The White House was not having it, directing criticism back at Cuomo and his own state policies that failed to ensure coronavirus patients were entering facilities that were secured and where they would be cordoned off from patients who are COVID-19 negative. Speaking to MSNBC Tuesday, Cuomo claimed that the coronavirus-related nursing home deaths were the highest in his state because New York suffered from the most coronavirus deaths overall, but also because the Trump administration insisted on claiming that the virus originated in China when it was actually coming from Europe. No, we pretty much confirmed that it came from China. China. Yes, we had more people die in nursing homes than anywhere else because we had more people die, Cuomo contended, because the federal government missed the boat and never told us this virus was coming from Europe and not from China. Blame, 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 blame. You people were out there trying to tell people, oh no, go visit Chinatown. If you don't order Chinese food, you're racist. If you stay indoors out of fear, then you hate people. And now when it came home to roost, now they want to go back and blame the federal government. So just remember that the Trump administration was preparing for this while you guys were trying to rip him out of office by force. All right, and I've got another one here on Cuomo from Fox News. CNN's Chris Cuomo finally asks brother softball question on New York nursing home controversy. This is from Joseph A. Wolfson. CNN anchor Chris Cuomo finally mentioned the nursing home controversy in his latest interview with his brother, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, after months of avoiding the subject. Though much of the coronavirus outbreak, there has been growing scrutiny over the Democratic governor's order in late March that forced nursing homes to accept patients who tested positive for the coronavirus. Despite testing deficiencies for both residents and staff, Cuomo signed an executive order on May 11th, reversing the policy, stopping hospitals from sending infected patients back to nursing homes and ramping up testing for staff. Roughly 7,900 people have either been confirmed or presumed dead from COVID-19 in nursing homes in New York, according to the state's health department. That equates to approximately 25% of all deaths in the state that have occurred in nursing homes per the latest state total from the Johns Hopkins Coronavirus Research Center. However, despite the mounting criticism of his brother's leadership, Chris Cuomo turned a blind eye on the subject over the course of 10 interviews in the past 3 months. That was until Wednesday night. Nursing homes. People died there. They didn't have to. It was mismanaged and the operators have been given immunity. What do you have to say about that? The CNN anchor asked. Several statements that are not correct, but that's okay. It's your show. You say whatever you want to say, Governor Cuomo jokingly reacted. The governor called the nursing home deaths the most tragic situation and pointed to how there were nursing home deaths all across the country and said we have to figure out how to do it better next time before the next virus wave occurs. And no, they were going in and they were quarantining people off that had COVID-19 in these nursing homes. This is not rocket science at this point, people, but of course, the media is barely going to call out the Democrats on any of this, especially when it's your own brother. I'm surprised it got this far. But that's what we have on this here. It looks like we got a video playing, but I have the desktop audio off, so we don't have to worry about that over here. And that's what we're seeing out of New York right now. As, once again, as I stated from the beginning of the show, the media is going to try and shove this back down your throat. All right, I've got one here from the Wall Street Journal that I archived, by the way, so I'll be talking a little bit about that a bit later on, so we won't go too much into that now. This actually came from Seawall over in the Discord, and then I went out and archived it so they wouldn't put me behind the paywall. News from the non-lockdown states from the editorial board over at the Wall Street Journal. GOP governors have faced enormous media pressure to lock down their states in solidarity with Democrats, and some are now getting browbeaten to shut down again amid coronavirus flare-ups. So it's worth pointing out that states that didn't lock down this spring kept the virus under control and experienced fewer deaths than most did. A new analysis by The Sentinel, a Kansas nonprofit, compared the 42 states that shut down most of their economies with the 8 that did not. The latter group includes mostly rural states, some with small metropolitan areas, North and South Dakota, Nebraska, Iowa, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Wyoming, and Utah. Private employment on average fell 7.8% between May 2019 and May 2020 in these states, while plunging 13.2% in the others. Rural state economies generally rely on more essential services like agriculture and food production, and some industries like energy and hospitality would have shed jobs regardless of the lockdowns. Still, private job losses were higher in states that locked down, like Colorado, compared to economically similar ones that didn't, like Utah. Also, Colorado told you it was illegal to go to work, so I can't imagine why their unemployment shot up like that. Yet per capita COVID fatalities in states that stayed open were on average about 75% lower than those that locked down. One reason that deaths in most states, regardless of whether they locked down, have been concentrated in nursing home facilities and minority communities that have higher rates of underlying health conditions and higher rates of people being stacked on top of each other and multi-generational housing. This is the main reason hospitalizations and deaths continued to surge in states like New York, New Jersey, Illinois, and Massachusetts, long after lockdowns took effect. About half of deaths in New Jersey and Illinois have been in nursing homes, and most of others have been in dense, low-income minority communities where social distancing is difficult. So yes, as we once said, elderly people with underlying conditions and people stacked up on top of each other seem to be the biggest drivers of what's going on here. Not locking people down and making sure they can't go to work. All right, let's keep going on here from CBS. Senate confirms Trump's 200th judicial nominee, filling all circuit court vacancies. This is from Melissa Quinn. The Senate on Wednesday confirmed President Trump's 200th nominee, huzzahs, to the federal bench, a milestone that caps an extraordinary effort by the president and the Republican-controlled Senate to leave an enduring stamp on the federal judiciary. Senators approved the nomination of Corey Wilson to the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals by a vote of 52 to 48, with Wilson's confirmation and that of Judge Justin Walker to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit last week. Mr. Trump has now filled all vacancies to the federal circuit courts. Walker, however, will not take his seat on the influential D.C. Circuit Court until September, when Judge Thomas Griffith, whose spot he is filling, officially retires. Huzzahs are in order. The vote to confirm Wilson is the culmination of the push by Mr. Trump, with the crucial assistance of the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, to reshape the federal bench and install conservative jurists who will make a lasting impact on U.S. law. In all, the president has appointed 53 judges to the circuit courts, which are the last stop for thousands of cases moving through the federal judicial system, and 143 judges to the district courts. Opponents and supporters of Mr. Trump largely agree that the president's imprint on the federal bench will be one of his most enduring legacies, as his judicial nominees, most of whom are in their 40s or 50s, will likely serve for decades. The president has also named 2 justices to the Supreme Court, cementing its rightward shift. Yeah, last week does not confirm any of those words that we just read. There's not a rightward shift. Rightward shift and constitutionality are 2 different things, but yeah, continuing to push your agenda. Mr. Trump outpaces nearly all of his predecessors in judicial confirmations, ranking behind only President Jimmy Carter in terms of all Article III judges and all U.S. Courts of Appeals judges confirmed at this point in their presidencies. President Obama, for example, saw 55 Circuit Court judges confirmed across his 2 terms as president, while Mr. Trump has seen 53 confirmed in just his first term. So, I do want to see more I don't want to see activism on the courts anymore. I want to see them just doing it objectively. But of course, the left and the leftward media are just going to come out and say that, oh no, this is just going to be activism for the right, and they're going to legislate for the right from the bench, and we would never legislate from the bench. Roe versus Wade. So, we'll see what happens there. And I'm really interested to see what happens with Mr. Trump's successor, whether it be in 2020 here or 2024, what he plans to do to try and do something about this, because you know that the DNC already has something in the works for this. All right. Let's keep going here. We got a few more here, and I know we're running up on the clock already for an hour. Jamal Bowman, far-left primary challenger, is set to oust 16-term New York congressman, releases victory statement. This is from Eric Quintanar. Left-wing candidate Jamal Brown has declared victory in his primary challenge against Congressman Eliot Engel, the establishment-backed chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, who has served in Congress since 1989. Bye. I wish it could have been somebody else that ousted you, but bye. I'm a black man who was raised by a single mother in a housing project. That story doesn't usually end in Congress, but today, that 11-year-old boy who was beaten by police is about to be your next representative, Bowman tweeted on Wednesday morning. Oh, fucking spare me. I cannot wait to get to Washington and cause problems for the people maintaining the status. Oh, Jesus. Oh, that's not your job. Your job is to represent the people of your district and the whims that they want. Let's keep going. While the official results of the race are not yet known, Bowman's statement was released after Cook political reporter editor David Wasserman called the race in Bowman's favor and argued that Engel's vote tally deficit was too substantial to overcome through the incoming absentee ballots. The Engel campaign has called any attempt to declare a winner in this election as undermining of the democratic process, reports Spectrum News 1 New York. There are many thousands of absentee ballots that will need to be counted, and that count won't begin for another 6 days. Any declarative statement on the outcome of this race right now is premature and undermines the democratic process, said the Engel campaign, reports Spectrum News 1 New York. I bet he'd be singing a different tune if he was far ahead at this point. Congressman Engel strongly believes that every absentee ballot should be counted. I once again bet he would be singing a different tune if he was ahead, especially during this pandemic. The statement continued. In the meantime, the congressman will continue his work for the people of the Bronx and Westchester. Hank Shankop, a New York-based political consultant, told Bloomberg News that while he believes that it isn't impossible for Engel to win if absentee ballots overwhelmingly favor him, regardless, change is here to stay. Yeah, it is. Unfortunately, especially for New York, because it is going progressive right now. I mean, the next district over just re-elected in a primary bid Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who doesn't even go to her district and actually ran on the fact that her predecessor also didn't go to his district. So they don't care. They just want to be progressive and socialist and all that other fun shit. All right, let's keep going. From CNN, polls in Washington and Ohio bring good news for Joe Biden, from Grace Sparks. Former Vice President Joe Biden leads over President Donald Trump in one of the critical Midwestern states that helped the Republican Party win the presidency 4 years ago, according to a Marquette University poll from Wisconsin. And a new poll out from Ohio, from Quinnipiac, shows a tied race in a state where Trump bested Hillary Clinton by 8 points in 2016. The Wisconsin poll, released by Marquette University Law School on Wednesday, finds Biden widening his lead over Trump, garnering 49% of registered voters to Trump's 41%. In early May, Biden stood at 46 and Trump at 43. Trump's job approval has ticked down slightly. 45% of Wisconsin voters who approve of the job he's doing as president, 51% disapprove. That's moved from 47% approve and 49% disapprove in early May. 3 in 10 voters approve of how Trump is handling the nationwide protests over the death of George Floyd and police brutality against black Americans. Overall, 61% of Wisconsin voters approve of the protests, while 36% disapprove. Around a quarter of voters support calls to defund the police, 70% oppose, while 81% a call to restructure the role of police and require greater accountability for police misconduct. 16% oppose. Under half approve of how Trump is handling the coronavirus, 52% disapprove. Concern around coronavirus has decreased slightly, with 55% who say they'd worried about COVID-19 compared to 60% in March. In Ohio, Biden received 46% support among registered voters and 45% support Trump, according to the Quinnipiac poll released early Wednesday. Trump's approval stands at 44% approve, and 53% disapprove in the Buckeye State, and 43% approve, 54% disapprove of his handling of the coronavirus. Which, okay, we do have to keep a couple things in mind here. First off, we had 2 incomings coming in 2016, and that is going to be an effect that a lot of the pundits are not talking about at this point. The fact that Trump is an incumbent and he's got these numbers are going to take some effects on this. But still, I don't necessarily buy polls because they do skew leftward sometimes quite a bit. These are not aggregated polls, number 2. And number 3, we were looking at a all but one state landslide for Hillary Clinton by the polls in 2016. So I do take all of this with a grain of salt, but I also keep in mind the fact that Trump has a record that we can work against where he didn't in 2016. And all Hillary Clinton had was a senator for a couple terms and a secretary of state. So there are a lot of other factors in here than just the polling numbers. And we are going to see what happens in November. Either way, I don't know if it's going to be good, no matter what happens in November. All right, let's keep going here from the Washington Post, archived once again. Appeals court orders judge to dismiss criminal case against Michael Flynn. This also came to me from Seawall over on the Discord. U.S. District Judge Emmett G. Sullivan must immediately dismiss the criminal case against President Trump's former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and cannot scrutinize the Justice Department's decision to drop the long-running prosecution, the federal appeals court ruled on Wednesday. In a 2-1 decision, the court said it is not within the judge's power to prolong a prosecution or examine the government's motives in the politically charged case. Flynn twice pleaded guilty to having lying to federal agents about this pre-inauguration contacts with Russia's ambassador before the Justice Department moved in May to dismiss the charges. This is not the unusual case where a more searching inquiry is justified, wrote Judge Naomi Rayo, a recent nominee of the president, in a decision that can be reviewed by the full U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit. In a victory for Flynn and the Trump administration, the panel majority said Sullivan overstepped his role and committed a clear legal error by refusing to immediately close the case and instead appointing a former judge to argue against the Justice Department's decision. The judge's demonstrated intent to scrutinize the reasoning and motives of the Department of Justice constitute irreparable harms that cannot be remedied on the appeal, Rao wrote in the 19-page opinion that was joined by Judge Karen LaCraft Henderson, a nominee of President George H.W. Bush. Soon after the opinion was published, Trump tweeted, "Great. Appeals court upholds Justice Department's request to drop criminal case against General Michael Flynn." He later reported in the Oval Office, "I'm very happy about General Flynn. He was treated horribly." And the big thing that I took away from this is not what happened here. That is between the Justice Department and General Flynn, and Judge Sullivan, of course. The big takeaway that I got from this one was when this happened, I was reading Twitter, and first off, they did try to bury this story as much as they could because it was devastating to their narrative. And number two, of course, now everyone was out there trying to say, well, lying to the FBI is okay if you're in the Trump administration, and the Orange Man is just going to go out and protect his buddies, and that's why he hired William Barr to protect his buddies. Here's reality. I would love to see any of the rest of people who are criticizing the Justice Department, President Trump, and Michael Flynn, what they would do if they were sitting there and the FBI was saying that they were going to go after their family members unless this particular person rolled over. Would they have the courage? Especially if it was their children. Would they have the courage to do so, or would they fucking roll over just the same? Because I'm willing to bet everybody who was throwing that hashtag around yesterday would have just rolled over as long as it meant defending their family and their loved ones. But that's what this is going to be for the rest of time. Partisanship and horror. All right, let's keep going here. I got a couple more, and then we'll do a thing that I like and a thing that I hate, and I'm going to go eat some breakfast because I've been really hungry since I sat down in this chair. From PC Gamer, a lawsuit against the Internet Archive threatens vital gaming history. This is from Alexis Ong. The Internet Archive is the only real resource for digital gaming history. Earlier this month, Ars Technica reported on a massive lawsuit against the Internet Archive over its National Emergency Library, a temporary initiative that made more than 1 million ebooks freely available during the pandemic. The Internet Archive is the world's oldest or only record of the Internet, home to the Wayback Machine, which has been compromised, the Open Library, the Political TV Ad Archive, and other rare ephemera. The litigants are major book publishers Hachette, HarperCollins, Wiley, and Penguin Random House, setting a precedent that could imperil the IA's precious collection of obsolete software. Even though the archive decided to end the unlimited lending of the National Emergency Library, the lawsuit still threatens decades of work documenting the greatest technological innovation of our time. This isn't just a problem of the publishers getting trigger happy with their lawyers. The lawsuit is just a reminder of how vulnerable and limited our preservation of digital history is today. It jeopardizes the owner's work of video game preservation. The Internet Archive houses around 15,000 PC games and more than 6,900 MS-DOS games, including browser-based emulators for both landmark games and obscure indie projects. Some even thought lost forever. Many of these games don't exist anywhere else and were cataloged and preserved with the help of donors, sponsors, hobbyists, and the IA's own staff. Put simply, the Internet Archive is the only entity of its kind. We threw our doors open to all software probably 20 years ago. It started with things like PC shareware and simple sets of programs, said Jason Scott, the Internet Archive historian, and I spoke in May for an article about new games made for retro consoles. I was hired in 2011, and we just started saying, send us everything, send us all aspects of software, including consoles and homemade items, and every computer system under the sun, he recalled. You can't just look at a picture of something and be able to figure out how it was coded. So we wanted to ensure that as much of it was accessible as possible. We added emulation to be able to play in the browser so that people could try different pieces of software. Some have compared the lawsuit to the burning of the Library of Alexandria, and they're not entirely wrong. The IA has remarkable artifacts from the personal computing age, including rare games like the Apple II's Muppetville and the 1998 Japanese game Labyrinth, which some retro enthusiasts believe didn't even exist. You can play emulations of the 1988 Neuromancer game, Qbert, a popular fan mod of Westwood's Dune 2, and Tongue of the Fat Man, one of the weirdest, rarest fighting games ever made. So yeah, and I mean, if they're going to sue this and get it all shut down at this point, we are going to lose a lot of this, and that's unfortunate. I was actually surprised to find out that so much of this was out there. I actually found this from Joe, who was over in the Discord, but he didn't put it in the Discord. I found it over on his Twitter, and I thought it was interesting. I would actually love to go and check out this archive before they go and shut it down with the lawsuit, because I'd love to see some of this stuff. I don't know where the Internet Archive is. I'm going to do some research onto that off-site and off-camera here, but I would love to go and see that. That would be like a mecca for a PC gamer like me. And I'd love to see some of the old stuff and even see if I could get my hands on a shareware copy of some of it. But yeah, we will probably be seeing more out of this as we move along here. All right, the last one here, I believe, is also from Seawall here. From the New York Times, also archived, so I can get behind their paywall. Hospitals sued to keep prices secret. They lost. The decision was a victory for the Trump administration, which sees pressure from patients as a way to control health costs. From Sarah Cliff and Margot Sanger-Katz. A federal judge has upheld a Trump administration policy that requires hospitals and health insurers to publish their negotiated prices for health services, numbers that are typically kept secret. The policy is part of a major push by the administration to improve transparency in healthcare. Insurers and health providers usually negotiate deals behind closed doors, and patients rarely know the cost of services until after the fact. Administration officials said more price transparency would lead to lower and more predictable prices in an industry that has huge ranges in what insurers pay for services. A simple blood test, for example, can cost $11 or $1,000. Wow. We're getting to the end of the show, folks, because I'm having trouble reading. Coronavirus tests show a similar variation with prices from $27 to $23.15. But in a lawsuit, the American Hospital Association said the administration did not have the legal authority to require the publication of negotiated prices. Arguing that the publication of the prices could have perverse effects, on Tuesday, the judge Carl Nichols disagreed. In his decision, Judge Nichols found that the hospitals were attacking transparency measures generally in a bid to limit patients' insight into the medical prices. Hospitals may be affected by market changes and need to respond to a market where consumers are more empowered, he wrote, stating that was not reason enough to make the rule unlawful. Judge Nichols, who was appointed to the D.C. District Court last year, also rejected the hospital's other arguments that the new rules would create overwhelming administrative burdens and that increased transparency might actually drive up prices. No, it's actually going to have the opposite effect. Now, part of the law that made it impossible for hospitals to disclose their prices was a push towards single-payer healthcare. You weren't allowed to know what it was going to cost before the insurance kicked in and covered it. It was an incentive for you to make sure that you had insurance and you couldn't go out and try and pay this for cash out of your own pocket. And it was also an incentive, like I said, to try and drive up the costs of healthcare to the point that people thought that they needed to have single payer. All in all, they say that this is just a win for the Trump administration on various Trumpy kind of stuff, but this is a big blow to single payer. Because now the people know what it's going to cost and are going to know up front. Some of them are still going to try and bypass the insurance company and pay for it out of pocket. Because they don't want the insurance company involved. Because the insurance company is out to make a profit of their own as well. And they can charge you whatever they want for premium, especially under the ACA. And the fact that the ACA is driving costs off of this. And build their own profits because of it. So this is good, and like I said, this is a big blow for single payer, which is something that I would love to see not go through in my lifetime. Alright. Now let's do a thing that I like and a thing that I hate, and then we're going to head on out of here. So the thing that I like today, I mentioned it a little bit earlier that I was going to talk about this, and the thing that I like today is archive.today. Now, you saw that I used 3 articles today that were archived through archive.today. For a reason, that they were all 3 behind paywall. I didn't realize that archive.today had that function, and I've used it before for various things, like when I was doing a solo video on a Wisconsin lawmaker who was very, very close to putting her account on lockdown status. I took the archive of the Facebook post and a tweet that she had made before she locked everything down, and I'm glad that I got it today. So I have used this before. But the fact that I now know that I can use this to get behind the paywall means that I can expand the sources that I use on Contemporary. Because I've been leaning very heavily on Fox News, on the Daily Wire, because they let me read stuff without putting me behind a paywall and saying, you must pay 99 cents in order to read this. So I will be using a lot more WAPO, New York Times, and doing a lot more criticism on other websites like this. I'll be using USA Today again, which I love the USA Today. but they're locked behind a paywall. And Forbes and a host of other sites that are locked behind a paywall. Now that I know I can just throw it in an archive and get behind it, I'm going to be using a lot more of that. And of course, along with ad blocker, that does prevent them from getting the ad revenue, which they don't deserve at this point. If they're going to write as trashy as they are, and we're going to see a lot of the trashy writing coming up in the near future, they don't deserve your ad revenue. They don't deserve my ad revenue, and they don't deserve anybody's ad revenue. So if you're not using Archive today for anything, go ahead and start using it, because it does, and this comes from me listening to Styx Hexenhammer as well, this does rob them of clicks and ad revenue. And that's a good thing. Drive these companies into the ground. They have been abusing you and your intelligence for years. So absolutely do that. All right, and now for a thing that I hate. So, from TV Guide, which I never thought that I would be reading from on my show, but this is just ridiculousness. Jenny Slate will no longer voice Missy on Big Mouth. Black characters on animated show should be played by black people. This is from Krutika Mallikarjuna, I think. I think that's how I pronounce that. How would you pronounce that? Okay. I can't highlight that either. How would you pronounce that? Because I think I got it right. In a recent Instagram, Jenny Slate announced that she will no longer voice Missy, a character that's been lauded as a sensitive portrayal of a sweet, weird, and brilliant black girl on Netflix's Big Mouth. At the start of the show, I reasoned with myself that it was permissible for me to play Missy because her mom is Jewish and white, as am I. But Missy is also black, and black characters on animated shows should be played by black people, said Slate. I acknowledge how my original reasoning was flawed, that it existed as an example of white privilege. Oh, please saint me, black people. I have so much white privilege, and I'm going to lash myself 40 times for it. And unjust allowances made within a system of societal white supremacy, and that in me playing Missy, I was engaging in an act of erasure of black people. Ending my portrayal of Missy is a one step in a lifelong process of uncovering the racism in my actions. Oh, please, please laud me. I will lash myself 40 more times. Slate went on to write that recently she's contemplating her comedy career and that she acknowledges that she made mistakes along the way. She also added that she will continue to engage in meaningful anti-racist action, which means that her comedy is no longer going to be funny. Be thoughtful about the messages in my work, be open and curious to feedback, and do my best to take responsibilities for the ways that I am part of the problem. The creators of Big Mouth, Nick Kroll, Andrew Goldberg, Mark Levin, and Jennifer Flackett also posted on Kroll's Instagram in support of Slate's decision to step down and apologize to their fans. After thoughtful discussion with us and our black collaborators, Jenny Slate has decided, and we wholeheartedly agree, that Missy on Big Mouth should be voiced by a black actor. They wrote, "We sincerely apologize and regret our original decision to cast a white actor. Please keep watching our show. Please, please, please keep watching our show. We must have the views. We must have the Netflix." We made a mistake. We took our privilege for granted, and we're working hard to do better moving forward. My fucking God. So I've never seen Big Mouth. Let me rephrase that. I've seen parts of it because one of the guys at work that goes on break about the same time I do was watching through it and binging it in the break room, where I was usually reading or playing video games or something on my phone. So I've seen parts of it. I don't know if I'm going to watch it now. I was actually a little bit curious to see what it was all about, but I don't know if I can give them my views now. I can't. If they're going to be like this, I can't do it. But this goes on a completely different idea. And this goes on trying to judge a person by the color of his skin rather than his merits. You know what? I am going to watch it because I actually want to see how Jenny Slate was as an actress and how she edited the character, because I want to see how that's going to change going forward. I am legitimately curious at this point, and it's worth giving them the views for this. But, I mean, it's impossible for you to come out and match your gender to the person that you're playing. I mean, look at some of the famous characters, gender and race, I should say. Look at some of the famous characters out there that have not been voiced by people of their same gender and race. The one that was trending around Twitter yesterday was Bart Simpson. Bart Simpson was voiced by a woman, Nancy Cartwright, who is incredibly talented, by the way, and has done a lot of other voices as well. I mean, absolute talent in this woman, voicing an 8-year-old boy. And who else comes to mind when we think about this? You know what the big one is? Cleveland. Cleveland is one of the most beloved characters, especially by the black community. I know I worked with a guy, I swear to God, it was like the dude. They took the animated version of Cleveland and made him real life. He had the same mustache, he had the same approximate body build, he had the same hairstyle, about the same height. I mean, this guy was like a real life version of Cleveland. He absolutely was. And he watched the Cleveland show, and he found out the fact that it was Mike Henry that voiced Cleveland, and he still liked it. So all of this is pandering and virtue signaling. Even Joseph Gribble in the first seasons of King of the Hill was voiced by, famously, Brittany Murphy. Until Joseph hit puberty, and then they had to get somebody with a deeper voice than that, and then they switched it to a dude. But once again, especially on some of these younger characters like Bart Simpson, who stayed perpetually 8 for 30, 40 years, or however the hell long it's been. Or Joseph Gribble, who, a voice actor that was a teenage boy or a preteen boy, would have gone through puberty probably before the writers were ready for him to. They can keep these kids in perpetual prepubescence by using a voice actor that isn't a boy, and keep the storylines coming and going for these characters. But I mean, this is just virtue signaling and pandering. So that's what I have on this. I think it's idiocy. I really do. But I mean, do your thing. But I actually do want to see how the character changes if they do change the voice actor as well. As an art, I'm curious enough about it. Enough to at least punish myself with this show. But that's all that I have for today. So thanks everybody who came out here and watched. We will be back here tomorrow with more contemporary and more news, and I'm sure that it's going to be just as stupid as today's news. So come back and check us out, and we will read the names of everybody who chatted in the live chat over the last week. Until then, I'm Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.